Top 10 Netflix show recommendations. Not a week goes by without Netflix publishing tons of in-house productions. Series like Orange is the New Black and House of Cards were the big shows at the beginning of the streaming service. But since then, many more series have appeared that you could spend your whole life trying to get through. That's why we want to introduce to you today the 10 best series on Netflix that you may not even know. Financial advisor Marty Byrde faces a daunting problem. Because his colleague embezzled a drug lord's money, he needs to launder $500 million within 5 years in the Ozarks, an area in the United States. He needs to move there with his wife and 2 children who get more and more involved in his crooked schemes. The Ozarks are referred to as the Redneck Riviera. Accordingly, the Byrdes meet the most bizarre characters. Ozark is a prime example of unique, crazy characters and an exciting and winding story. Again and again, Marty and his family will be faced with challenges that seem insurmountable. Where some series falter after a solid first season, Ozark really hits the gas. The 4th and final season has been ordered by Netflix. Unfortunately, there is still no information about when it will drop. You should subscribe to stay up to date. Next up, Love, Death, and Robots is on this list. The Netflix series is basically a small, colorful collection of short films, most of them animated. As the name Love, Death, and Robots might suggest, the series is about robots, sex, and violence. But that is by far not the only thing. If you're into cyberpunk, dystopias, and alternative timelines, you should definitely take a look here, since you can get through the short films relatively quickly. Admittedly, some episodes are better than others, but with the short duration and the variety, you forgive that very quickly. If you're still not on board, this can perhaps convince you. The idea for the series comes from the Deadpool director Tim Miller and Fight Club creator David Fincher co-produced. A second season should definitely follow. The most exciting stories are still written by life. This brings us to the only documentary series on this list. Wild Wild Country is about the Indian guru Bhagwan, who founded a settlement in Oregon in the 80s. The cult-like community grew and prospered, and Bhagwan was worshipped like a god. It could all have been so beautiful if it weren't for the residents of America who viewed the whole thing more critically. The arguments continued to rock and rise and resulted in poison attacks, political intrigues, and attempted murder. Wild Wild Country left us completely stunned more than once. The 6-part documentary vividly shows a clash of cultures and the hunger for power of individual people. A positive surprise was that all sides had their say and all of them could describe their view of things. From a documentary series, we now switch to a comedy series. That is so unusual that it bewitched me from the very first second. We are of course talking about Master of None, by and with Aziz Ansari. The actor and comedian fans of Parks and Recreation should be familiar with. Master of None tells episodic stories from the everyday life of an early 30-year-old Indian-born actor named Dev. The individual episodes could not be more different. One episode is shot and shown as a commercial. Another episode is told in a 30-minute touching love story. The second season partly takes place in Italy and was shot in black and white. Master of None exudes tons of creativity in every episode, and the stories seem so personal and authentic that you feel right at home. Maybe I shouldn't call the show a comedy show either, because it is difficult to put a stamp on it. Maybe it's a coming-of-age series for adults too, who don't feel so young anymore. Maybe that's why Master of None reminded me so much of the series Louie by US comedian Louis C.K. That is also recommended to you. But now there is a big catch to Master of None. For some, the unexcited narrative style is a little too slow, but you should definitely give the show a chance. If you still can't get enough science fiction, Altered Carbon takes place in a dystopian world in 2348. Death is defeated. The consciousness can be digitalized and stored on disks, and bodies are nothing more than clothes that you can change. Takeshi Kovacs, after 250 years in prison, has to solve a murder in order to regain his freedom. Altered Carbon is pure cyberpunk, and especially for fans from Ridley Scott's Blade Runner, a treat. There are futuristic elements in the series mixed with the mood of a classic film noir and garnished with a portion of action. From science fiction, we move on to true crime drama. The miniseries Unbelievable tells the story of a teenage girl and two investigators. The young Marie Adler calls the police and claims to have been raped. Only nobody believes her, and she is charged with false testimony. Years later, the two detectives, Grace Rasmussen and Karen Duvall, stumble on a whole series of rapes and realize there seems to be some truth in Mary's case after all. Few films and series show rape and false testimony like Unbelievable. Some scenes, such as interviewing rape victims and the reaction to it, is downright unbearable, especially with the fact in mind that the series is based on true events. I can't get enough from the two great leading actresses, Toni Collette and Merritt Weaver. The chemistry is just right between them. Similar to cop duos in The Nice Guys or True Detective, you just want to see more of the duo. We stick to crime and come to a man I mentioned earlier today, David Fincher. This man is one of the best directors of all time. Fight Club, Seven, Zodiac, Gone Girl, The Game. Do I have to say more? The American has been filming and producing series like House of Cards or Love, Death, and Robots, and movies like Mank for Netflix. But none of these can compete with Mindhunter. Fincher has directed 7 episodes of the series. Mindhunter follows FBI agents Holden Ford and Bill Tench interviewing serial killers. The series takes place in the 70s and shows the early days of criminal psychology and case analysis. The core of Mindhunter are, of course, the nerve-wracking and fantastically played scenes when the two agents encounter pure evil. Many series would stop here. Mindhunter also shows the protagonist's inner workings and problems. The only downer with Mindhunter, actually 5 seasons are planned, but the 3rd season has been put on hold for the time being. Too bad. The 7-part miniseries Godless is in 3rd place. The series takes place in the western town of La Belle at the end of the 19th century. After a mine accident in which almost all men died, the city is mostly inhabited by women who have to defend themselves against a brutal gang. Godless combines the best that Western has to offer. The series is extremely exciting, brutal, and staged fantastically. Godless has a strong and varied storyline, and you don't even have to be a Western fan to love them. The real show stealer is the charismatic outlaw Frank Griffin, embodied by Jeff Daniels. Yes, the Jeff Daniels who worked with Jim Carrey and Dumb and Dumber. You won't recognize him. And if you still need a reason to start the series, the showmaker is Scott Frank, who not so long ago with Queen's Gambit was able to create great successes. In 2nd place comes The Haunting of Hill House. What sounds like a harmless ghost story for children is in truth an incredibly touching family drama with horror elements. I can promise you one thing, The Haunting of Hill House is more exciting than most horror films. There are 2 reasons for this in the series. The intelligent and incredibly well-written script that switches again and again between different times and dream levels jumps back and forth with a twist that makes you stare at the screen with your mouth open. On the other hand, The Haunting of Hill House is impressive with its unique and 3-dimensional figures, who all have to struggle with their own problems and challenges. So finally, we get to the 1st place. I can already see the comments in front of me. What about Unorthodox? Where was The Queen's Gambit? Are you crazy? You forget Sex Education and BoJack Horseman. That and many more are all incredibly good series on Netflix, but none in my opinion come close to When They See Us. When They See Us tells the stories of the Central Park 5. That was 5 Latin and African American teenagers who were accused of raping and murdering a 28-year-old jogger in Central Park. They were pressured by the police to make confessions and were convicted. Without solid evidence, you may notice how it is already seething inside you. When They See Us makes you angry, stunned, and raises questions. Questions about structural and institutional racism via the police, the media, and the judiciary. How can something like this happen in a constitutional state? How can teenagers be put in jail without evidence? When a cinematic work manages to keep you busy and stir up discussions, it shows how important films and series are for our society. When They See Us shows in densely staged episodes with daunting images and incredible actors things that make you think. And when you've seen the show, take a look at the subsequent documentation When They See Us Now, where the real Central Park 5, the actors, and the maker Ava DuVernay have their say. These were our top 10 Netflix shows. Comment below your favorite pick. Please like, share, and subscribe for more Netflix recommendations.